Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hello, everybody. And Simon, as always, we really enjoy it. So I happy to be here and hash through some plans.
Absolutely. Let's continue the NFL Draft War Room series. So it's been about a month since we started this, and I'll admit I jumped the gun. I was really excited to do a War Room free agency version, but now those teams certainly look a lot different. You know, you look at the Chiefs and having Kenneth Walker. You have the Broncos trading for Jalen Waddle. You have everything that happened with the Raiders in the last month. My goodness. Those teams look a little bit different, but I think all the analysis still kind of holds true of the things they needed. But here's where we get to go to the spirit of this series, where we are locking ourselves into the war room. We are going through the big board and we are trying to determine what our ideal draft plan for these teams is going to be. So tonight we're going to cover the AFC North and the NFC South. We'll hit all the picks that these teams have, what their biggest needs are, but also just where their picks kind of align. You know, this Draft War Room series isn't just what are our needs and maybe list some players. It's, hey, what are the strengths of this draft? Where do our picks kind of fall and where can we get good value and just good players? What's the strength of this draft at different points, different days of the draft? It's a fun way to kind of look through the draft from a team perspective, big picture as well, not just zeroing in on like a mock draft, a 1 or 2 round mock draft. Um, anything you want to say as you thought about these specific teams, like as you were getting ready for these teams, anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, it's always a lot of fun, right? And listen, every team is so different. Man, we've got some teams that the offense is great, the defense is terrible, and it's really obvious what they need to do. Other teams, it's not so obvious. It's like, well, they could use a linebacker, they could use an edger, and maybe they could use an interior guard. So every team is so different. But no, every team was fun. We really, really enjoyed doing the work on this. We take it seriously, but it's seriously fun as well.
All right, just a couple programming notes. This is the Simon and Friends podcast. If you're on YouTube, thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, comment. If you are here on audio, A1 Day One, we appreciate you as always. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy these. Us doing them every year. And then if whatever part of this is over on the Box Score Network YouTube channel, thank you for being here. If this is your first time on the Box Score Network channel and you are an NFL draft fan, poke around the page because we have a ton of draft content coming in all different forms. We have these episodes, this series. Ben and I have several conversations that are up on this channel as well, just draft ideas, draft strategy, prospect strategy things. Ben has a series of videos, prospect breakdowns for defensive players. You can find his offensive player breakdowns from him and his team on the Pro Football Enterprises channel. And then we also have mocks and big boards from all of us here at Box Score. So if you are here for the first time checking out draft content, thank you and stick around because we got a ton already up and a ton more coming. Without any more further ado, let's get right into it. So, the NFL Draft War Room series, I am presenting draft plans for all 8 of these teams. Ben is in the war room with me. He's going to provide his feedback. Let me know what he thinks. And we'll see where we differ, where we align, and maybe what kind of consensus we can come to as we develop some of these plans. So, starting with the AFC North, starting with the team with the highest pick, the Cleveland Browns. We have picks 6, 24, 39, 70, 107, 141, 146, 149, 206, and 248. So we brought in Todd Monken to be our head coach for 3 reasons. Number one, he's the only one not named Jim Schwartz who wanted the job. Number two, we do actually think he can do the job. And number three, we want to get this offense back to a respectable place specifically. So it's time to improve the talent on offense, which we haven't successfully done in a really long time. We have 2 first round picks this year, and the needs are obvious. Everything. We need a quarterback. We can address that with our second pick or even pick 39, maybe if we wanted, or somewhere in between with a move up or move down. But I'm honestly less interested in that right now as I am in discussing our O line and wide receiver stack options and what we can maybe pull at 6 and 24. So in free agency, we signed Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, and Titus Howard, and that's for sure our left guard and center. Howard is going to be our either right tackle or right guard, depending on what we do in the draft. And a wide receiver, we did nothing. I'd say we have 3 number 3s on the roster in Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Isaiah Bond. Luckily, those 3 guys like have different play styles, so we could really go any way. We just want to upgrade the talent in the wide receiver room specifically. So we could stack this by going wide receiver first with maybe getting Carnell Tate at 6 to be a legit top 2 option on a good offense, and then address O line at 24. 24 would most likely not just a right tackle, a Blake Miller out of Clemson or a Maxi Inachor out of Arizona State. I think guys like Freeling and Lomu, left tackles, I think they're off the board by 24. And also maybe Caden Proctor, although I'm viewing him as a left guard only type player right now, anyways. And that's what Zion Johnson is. So Proctor wouldn't even really be on our board for us, truly. I either want an actual left tackle or I want a guy who is going to play on the right side. The other stack we could do would be take Monroe Freeling or Spencer Fano or Francis Maui Noah at 6. So go with offensive tackle early. And then a wide receiver at 24. The wide receivers in that range would be Denzel Boston, Kevin Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr., and Chris Brazzell. I like the O line wide receiver stack the best. I like the ceiling of those three offensive linemen and honestly the floor of them better than a Blake Miller or Ian Achor. I also like the flexibility of those guys maybe being able to play a couple different positions, whereas Miller and Ian Achor I think are pretty firmly like right tackle and maybe in Ian Achor's case right guard only players. So I like the flexibility there, and then the flexibility of the wide receivers too. Like those guys have their different skill sets, and I feel like I'm not getting boxed in to one specific kind of guy by waiting for wide receiver at 24. Whereas, especially at 6 on the wide receivers, like I'm really only looking at Tate. And so if Tate's not there, I'd have to scramble and go another direction. Anyways, I wouldn't want to scramble and go Tyson. I wouldn't want to scramble and go Makai Lemon. And of course, we could play this as, whoever falls to us in draft. If Tate's there, we go Tate, and then we take O line at 24. If Tate's not there, we go O line. It doesn't have to be black, white, wide receiver, O line, or vice versa. Now, the quarterback conversation. I'm just not that interested, honestly, at this point. Ty Simpson is QB2 in this draft, despite what Dan Orlovsky might say. And he's the only one worth taking in the end of round one into round two discussion. So if he's there after the first round, but teams are talking about taking between 33 and 39, I'll make some calls. That's our third pick, pick 39. So, we get to the end of round one. I've gotten a receiver, I've gotten an offensive lineman. Yeah, we'll make those calls Thursday night, see what it would look like to maybe move up somewhere in the first or in the second round a little bit higher. Um, could 39 plus 107 get him? Maybe. If not, I'm willing to sit at 39, just wait and see. And if he's there, cool. Maybe we'll do that. We'll see what else is on the board, but I'm kind of just looking to let 2026 play out. If it's not Simpson at 39, I'm looking at defensive back and guard. So I'm looking at, and that's at 39 and 70 on day two for us. A potential starting right guard at 39. There's Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon or Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. Both have played right side in their as a first year starter in college, but have been primarily left guards since then. So I'll have to kind of feel out that in the draft process, see if they can move over. If not, I'm looking at defensive pieces, right? So the DB room could stand to get younger. The edge room needs another piece. So I'm going to look in those directions if I don't get one of those guards. And then if we go defense at 39, at 70, I'm looking back on the offensive line. Keelan Rutledge at guard, but then even Jake Slaughter, Connor Liu, Sam Hecht, or Logan Jones as potentially starting center replacements, because Elton Jenkins, we've kind of locked into being our starting center. You look at the contract he got, you look at where he played last year, you look at the other guys we signed. Um, but based on his center play last year, his decreasing level of play the last couple of years, and his age, he's not a long term option. So at 70, I'm going to look specifically at a center as well as Rutledge, because I do like Rutledge at guard. After I find my interior offensive lineman starting at 107, I'm looking for another pass catcher or two. This could be a receiver or even a tight end. Harold Fandon is great, but I want to be able to move him around the formation. And it's a great draft to get your classic like wide tight end, be in line, block a little bit, catch a little bit. So I think I can get that as early as day 3. After that, it's continuing just to add depth on the defense. So all in all, my ideal plan is I'm getting Freeling at 6 specifically would be the guy I would, if I had my druthers, put him on the left side, let Titus Howard play right tackle. And then I'm getting Omar Cooper Jr. at 24 to be my true. I'll put him in the slot probably, but good route runner, good separator, good hands over the middle kind of guy. Then at 39, 70, and 107, I'm looking at edge, DB, interior offensive line, and then 2 more pass catchers in the 140s, and then defensive depth after that. Ben, what do you think of this draft plan for the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I like 90% of it. The two things that really stood out to me, let's start with the offensive line because it's all different, right? All that offensive line work that you did years ago that paid off and helped you compete, it's all gone now. I mean, every bit
Hmm.
of it. If you could have pulled a guy or two back in, but it would have only delayed a year or two what had to happen. So listen, the fact that they've made three offensive line signings, I think it was, that's important. They had to do that. Somebody's got to play offensive line this year for the Browns. None of that negates the heavy need to restock offensive line. And that's why you kept mentioning it, not just in the first round, but also coming back at the third or fourth pick to continue restocking that. It's got to be done. It's just as big a need now as it was 6 weeks ago before free agency, as far as we've got to get more talented and we've got to get younger. Those two things have to happen. So, and it will. It'll take more than one off season. So I love the fact that you're looking offensive line at either of the first two picks, and then even later an interior offensive lineman at whichever pick we end up wanting to use there. So I think that it has to happen, and you've got that built in. So that's what I love. The stack. You did what I think is the right way to do stacks. Okay, there's a wrong way and a right way, in my opinion. You took clusters of players that you expected to be at both groups and compared them. And that's the right way to do stacks. You think, well, hey, at 24 or whatever it is, there should be this group of receivers sitting there, and there should be this group of offensive linemen sitting there, and vice versa at 6. There should be a cluster of this offensive lineman and a cluster of this receivers. That's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it, I've heard it done over and over and over again, is people say, well, would you rather have this player at 6 and 24? Or would you rather have that player at 24 and 6? There are no guarantees that that one player is going to be
Hmm.
sitting there at your second pick, right? I mean, absolutely none. You have no control over that. But what you can logically figure percentage wise is yes, out of these three or four players, there should be one guy that we like sitting there. And I'm with you. Those offensive linemen that are probably sitting there at 6 look a lot better than whatever I may get, say, at offensive line at 24. And I still like the receivers I can get at 24, whatever our second pick is, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. I would grab whichever the offensive lineman I want at 6. And then when it comes to my second first rounder, that's where I grab my wide receiver. And there's a nice cluster sitting right there at our second pick. So I think that's the beautiful, correct way to do stacks. And I'm all in on the offensive line, and I'm all in on us getting another pass catcher, which I think it's obvious we need as well.
I keep hearing even now, post like a few weeks post combine, when people are doing this stack thing and they're talking about the Browns and they're saying, you just get Monroe Freeling or Caleb Lomu at 24. Sorry, what? What world are
I
we
don't think
living in where
so.
those guys are going to be there at 24?
Yeah,
I just know the Lions at 17, the Steelers at 21, like the Eagles at 23. Like
right,
there are so and you could. It's probably the most popular comment on mock drafts. Like this guy won't be there then, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to like yuck
right.
anybody's yum on who they want at 24. But when you're doing something like this for me and you're just saying, "Oh, I'll just get this one specific guy." No, you gotta like, what's worst case scenario, right?
Right.
If you're saying Lomu, Freeling, and Caden Proctor are the three guys you're looking at 24, okay, what's worst case? You get Caden Proctor. Feels a lot different than getting Monroe Freeling. So like,
Right.
you gotta be okay with that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, I don't know if he's gonna get brought up much elsewhere. And I meant to do this on my O line episode with Shane a couple weeks ago. Um, I have my comp for Blake Miller,
Okay.
which is
Trot it
just
out.
like the most in it. Like the fact that I need a comp for Blake Miller is just kind of a wild place to be in, and that's just who we are. Um, but it's Caleb McGarry, right tackle for the Falcons.
Really? Wow.
The power that they play with, the foot, it's not foot speed, right? They're not particularly fast guys. They're light on their feet though, right?
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
they can change direction a little bit. They can move a little bit. They can generate power. They've got strong hands. McGarry took a while, but he learned to hold up in pass pro. because I don't know if it was just learning to trust. We talked about this earlier with Freeland actually, learning to trust Lindstrom next to him, the interior next to him, where okay, I'm not gonna overset because I've got backup on the inside. But that was his thing, like good run blocker because he generates a lot of power. Um, but like wasn't always strong in pass pro, and still now he can still get beat around the edge with pure speed. But that's my comp for Blake Miller. Like he's light on his feet, but he generates power. He can usually be in the right place, play within himself. Um, and then, McGarry went 27 in his draft, like end of first round. So it would not surprise me if Miller was just kind of like someone drafted him end of first round or second round, and just like you don't think about him for like 8 years. Like he gets a second contract and you're like, oh, Blake Miller. Oh, he did start for 4 years and oh, he wasn't that bad. And then he just gets another contract and then all of a sudden he's in his 30s and you're like, oh wow, Blake Miller. He's been with the I don't know, pick it with the Cleveland Browns for 9 seasons. Look at that. I didn't even think about him one time since he got drafted. I could see that for Blake Miller. So Blake Miller, Caleb McGarry is my comp.
Yeah, it's an
Any
interesting
extended
comp.
Blake
Yeah.
Miller thoughts? Not a lot of.
It,
I mean, just the fact that he's here is hilarious. But here we
yeah,
are.
you know I'm not a Miller fan. Having
I
said
know.
that, that's all about where you get
Yeah,
drafted. You catch him at the right point, I'm thrilled to death to have him, right? I mean,
yeah.
so at a certain point, he's high enough on the board, you're like, yes. To my experience, and this goes back to him playing high. He plays very extremely
Mm,
high. It was one thing I always picked on with Orlando Brown. Same thing to
hmm.
me. It was like, man, I have a hard time seeing him ever adjust that playing style to where he can really handle his business when it comes to just even average edge rushers. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's got a lot of things going for him, and yeah, he may be starting tackle for a long time. I really wouldn't doubt that. There's a lot good there. But man, when I want to throw the football downfield, I don't want to have to help out my tackle, and I really doubt that I have a lot of doubts that him playing that tall and struggling with edge rushers is going to gradually get a lot better. So that's where I'm at on Miller. But yeah, a lot there still to like.
Um. Who would your ideal choice at 6B at offensive tackle for the Browns?
Yeah,
If they had their pick of any of them, Freeling, Fano, or Maui Noah.
I'm happy with all three. I really am. They're all three kind of different. The more you've talked about Freeland, and man, I watched the tape and I beat him up over the tape, right?
Hmm.
But still, you talk about long range and can do a lot of everything, I'd be just as happy with Freeland. I really would. So, you know, I probably still have Fano. I know I do. I have Fano rated higher and Malinois rated higher. But when you look at long term and ceiling and start mixing that in, why not Freeland? I have no problem with it.
And then last question, just because I know you're having this internal debate and it's killing you, so I might as well put you on the spot on the podcast. That group at 20, when you get to the end of the first round, your second tier of receivers, who would you come out of there with if you had your druthers? I mean, I mentioned Boston, Concepcion, Cooper, and Brazel. Is there another name you would include in that, or who's your favorite in that group right now?
Yeah, honestly, for the Browns, it would be Boston or Brazel. And from that, I have some hard-headed, stubborn, obstinate opinions, and some of them will never change. I'll carry them to my grave, right? But for if I were comparing Boston and Brazil, I really would want to talk to everybody in the room and get a feel for, do I want a guy in Boston who I think is more limited but more polished and I think I know exactly what I'm getting? Or do I want this Brazil kid who's got a very unique talent that not many guys have? I know he's got it. Can we max out that and truly get a really great receiver here? I'm very tempted to go and grab that high ceiling with Brazel, even though I know there's a risk and a floor bottoming out there too. So
And I think that would probably make a little more sense for the Browns because what I did when I mentioned the stylistic differences of those three guys, right? Like Tillman, Judy, and Bond. I don't know where exactly the Browns were having Judy line up last year, and their wide receiver room got so decimated by injuries. Anyways, it probably wouldn't matter. But
okay.
if Tillman is like, let's say Tillman is their big, like old school X, where it's like he's running the downfield routes as their big guy, some speed, but just some bigness and toughness to him. And then Judy's like their slot route runner type, and then Bond, who's no guarantee Bond's gonna be their starter anyways, but like he's
Right.
there right now, and he's your Z as like you throw him some screens, some deep shots, some drag route stuff. The guy I would want to upgrade most is Judy because I want to upgrade that slot route runner, get the guy open, make things happen quickly. But in your mind, if you're getting Brazel or you're getting um, Boston, you're upgrading that big X receiver. You're upgrading Tillman
Right.
ideally, right? So, and like I think that makes sense because I don't know if Tillman is a true X. I don't know if that's where he would best align. And I think contractually, he's probably also in his last year of his deal, whereas Judy they extended and Bond
Okay.
is, whatever his situation. So that would also make sense from a like, okay, get this guy and like play him behind Tillman for part of the year, and then you let Tillman go in free agency, and now you have your big body X. So I think that makes sense positionally too. But it was good to get our ideas there. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. You tell I wanted to live with Cleveland for a bit because these other ones, it gets a little straightforward, especially right here. So the Cincinnati Bengals, we pick at 10, 41, 72, 110, 189, 199, 221, and 226. It's no secret. We need to fix the defense. We've been bottom 10 in defensive DVOA 3 seasons in a row. The unfortunate thing is, picking at 10 is a dicey place to be to get an impact defensive player in this draft. Now, there's plenty of scenarios where a Caleb Downs, a David Bailey, or a Ruben Bain will fall to us, but we see 5 impact defenders in this draft and 7 teams that could go defense in front of us. That's why, depending on what the Cardinals and Titans do at 3 and 4, I'm starting to look at moving up as early as 5 with the Giants. We have picks 72 and 110 in the middle of the draft, but then not another pick until 189. If starting with the Jets, the draft goes Arvell Reese and then maybe David Bailey and Sonny Styles 2 through 4, I'm offering both those picks to take downs at 5. So I'm calling the Giants and I'm saying 10, 72, and 110 for 5. Do you do it? But then I probably also look to get like 145 back or something to bridge that gap a little bit. It's too much to trade a third and a fourth for a safety or an edge with historically short arms, right? That's just not good business, right? Historical outliers, bad positional value, and trading up to do that in the top 5. But if I can get a little something back, I'll feel a little bit better. Anyways, if it's Cleveland at 6 or Washington at 7 that I needed to trade with, I'm offering 72 and not 110. If it's New Orleans or Kansas City at 8 or 9, I'm just offering 110. But if things are playing out well for us and more offensive players are going earlier, I'm happy to sit at 10 as long as it looks like I'm getting one of those 5. If I get any of those 5 guys, I'm happy. Um, I don't even know what my true stack about them would be. I'm at this point. Um, I would just be thrilled to get any of those guys that I view as defensive playmakers and difference makers for this team. At 41, I'm taking another defender. A swing on a Caleb Banks here would be interesting. He might fall because of the medical, because it did come out he broke his foot at the combine. So that's really
Oh,
dicey. But if we can clear him medically, that's a big, big hit. But there are plenty of names at all levels of the defense that I got out here at 41. 72 or 110, depending on if I make any trades, I'll look at an interior offensive lineman, specifically at center. We just traded or just drafted the mid-round guards last year. Um, Fairchild and Winters, whatever that other guy's name was. I'm the Bengals. I don't actually care who my offensive linemen are. And then the later day 3 picks are going to be more defensive swings. But at 72 or 110, wherever, and I mentioned the names earlier, Hecht, Jones, Lou, Slaughter, like pull a name out of a hat there. One of the centers. We have Ted Karras still on the roster, but we want to have a plan in place for when he's done. So looking for one of those picks in the middle there to be a center, but it's going to be defense otherwise. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks. If I have all 8, it's going to be 7 defensive players and one center sitting in the middle of that. What do you think about this plan for the Bengals?
yeah, I agree. And this one's fairly straightforward. I don't see how you can come up with too much different. I'll discuss one difference here in a second. The focus on defense, I totally agree with, and that's what we said last off season. They started that process. They're working on it now. Probably next off season, really finishing that up, I figure. But I think that's the thing. And I'm happy taking best defensive player available at any spot we're picking. I'm also totally happy with your plan of trading up, and getting an impact player. Why not? We've already started the defensive
Hmm.
process. We know we're not going to finish it this off season. So we got all these picks sitting here. Why not trade up since we're kind of within reach? and get a guy we that everybody really does covet. Why not? I have no problem with that. If we stick at 10, a Mansour Delane would totally make me satisfied for the Cincinnati Bengals. I wouldn't even hate trading back and collecting some guys that are sitting deeper in the first round, and maybe even adding, say, another early second round pick or something. I'd be thrilled with that. Sitting there at 41, I wouldn't mind trading up from 41 and grabbing some of those defensive players that are sitting right there at the edge of the first round. So as long as it's defense early, I'm thrilled. Okay, so trade up, trade back, sit, stick, pick. I'm okay with it. And then yeah, I'm hearing more and more people complaining about Bengals offensive line, you know, and you and I banged on them, especially me, 3 off seasons ago. I mean, just drilled them up one side and down the other, and they ignored it, and Joe Burrow acted like it didn't matter, and the offense has flourished, and now all of a sudden we're hearing, oh, they need to fix the offensive line. Well, yeah, that's always been the case. I kind of gave up on it. But yeah, if at some point, the organization feels like we're finally ready to do an offensive line thing, I'd be all in favor of that too. But this year, early picks, defense for me, and then let's start solidifying something, whether it's center or guard or whatever. Yes.
You know, when I do the war rooms, I'm trying to think about a little bit of what they're doing, right? Like what their actual plan is. Not necessarily trying to predict, but try and be in their heads a little bit, all right? Like what are they going for? And yeah, they just like for them, this is the biggest offensive line investment they've had since
Yeah.
who's the one that finished his career with the Rams? Whitworth,
Yeah.
right? Since
Yep.
since he was like there his hey, like when he was there. Because they have a big money left tackle who like we could quibble about how good we think but like he's a big money left tackle, just got an extension. You have a first round pick at right tackle, um, and you have two mid round picks at guards, right? So like that you've
Yeah.
drafted, and Karras is like a respected veteran who's been around for a long time. So like this is the most investment on the offensive line they've ever had. So it's kind
It
of
is.
like for them, they're like, look at us. Look, we have the 20th best offensive line in the league, man. We're rolling in it. And they've just got everything on offense, and you've got those guys for a reason. So yeah, this has to be defense. Um, yeah, 10 is a dicey spot. If you can't get one of those five guys, and those five guys to me are Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, Caleb Downs, and there's an edge. I'm at Ruben Bay, right? If they can't get one of those five, I don't want to take like and you could take a Delane. Delane's a good player. And like Dax Hill is so up and down. DJ Turner's up and down. But those are like objectively their two best defenders, right? And like Delane could be your slot when you go into nickel, and he would probably be an upgrade over either one of the. But I want to feel like I want to feel the pick, right? I just want to I want to feel it in my bones, like when a play is happening. This is my slight against corners and stuff. Um, but I need to see and feel that guy making an impact. And it's funny with someone like Sonny Styles because they played two rookie linebackers last year, and Sonny Styles is the man, and he's better than those guys are. But like, are they going to want another rookie linebacker in the middle trying to call the defense, right? Or are they going to say we sank with those two guys last year, so we're just gonna bank on the experience and it might be a sunken cost fallacy a little bit where they're like, no, we went through the trials and tribulations of those guys being rookies that now we're gonna let them play as second year guys. But you put a Caleb Downs behind them, you get a little help
Yeah.
from an edge rushing perspective and Bain or Reese or Bailey. Um, and I don't think Styles or Reese is gonna get there. So it's gonna be about can Bailey or Downs or Ruben Bain, yeah, get to you there. Um, and that would feel so different from an edge rushing perspective, where now we're taking these two hyper productive players that have questions in like their makeup,
Yeah.
right? Um, Bailey, is he a run defender? Bain, are his arms long enough? But last year, where it was like this guy who looks perfect, but like didn't have the production that those two guys had. So that would be like a cool kind of yin and yang for them, I think, to be able to nab one of those guys. Um, all right. That's it for the Cincinnati Bengals. Done.
Yeah. 'Cause- 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 yeah.
Picks 14, 45, 80, 115, 154, 162, 173, 174, 211, 250, and 253. We're back on the clock with the 14th pick, everybody. Don't, ignore everything that happened in the last 30 days. And that's pretty good because we have needs we need to fill. The interior of our offensive line had two issues last year at the guard spots. And while we brought back John Simpson from the Jets, who was with us before, and he's going to improve one of those spots, we lost Tyler Linderbaum and all of that. So we still have two holes on the interior of the offensive line. I'm hoping one of those right tackle falls, right? I'm hoping Spencer Fano or Francis Mauigoa falls. Because if so, I'd be willing to trade up a bit to get one and put them straight at guard. Now, this is Simon. This isn't, these guys need to play guard. But as the Ravens, as a really smart franchise, I could easily see them being like, oh, these guys are going to fall down the boards a little bit because people don't want to take a tackle with short arms. Sure, we'll take him. And if he plays guard instead of tackle, great. He's going to be an all pro guard for us. And that would suck for Simon. But anyways, that's not the point. Back into this. That trade would likely be 14 and 115 to get to maybe 11 or 12, and then 14 plus 154 to get to 13. Like I'd even move one spot up because we know the Rams could be active, right? The Rams could be looking to trade this pick if they're like, hey, we want to get a player or we want to get something for 2027, like, like they did last year. So if those guys aren't falling because they could theoretically go as high as the top five for both of them. I'm looking at wide receivers and corners at 14. We need an upgrade at receiver, regardless of what you think of Zay Flowers, and we need a real corner too to keep Marlon Humphrey in the slot as he continues to age because that's his best position. So Jordan Tyson, Makai Lemon, Mansour Delane, and Avion Terrell are all on the board for us. Lemon is almost a write-off because I don't want to build the wide receiver room around two smaller guys. But if for some reason Tyson, Delane, and Terrell are all gone, I'd be happy with Lemon. The order I would go in is probably Tyson 1, Delane 2, Terrell 3, then Lemon. Then at 45, I'd look at whichever position I didn't take at 14. Then at 80, I'd look at interior offensive line. Noticing a theme for the AFC North right now. So I'm coming out of the first 2 days of the draft with a receiver, an offensive lineman, and a corner. Because, hey, the Ravens need a center. The Ravens don't have a center right now. There's still a few guys out there in free agency. There's a Lloyd Cushenberry out there. There's a few guys you could get to be a center for 1 year sort of thing. But the Ravens still don't have a center post the Linderbaum trade or signing. So if they also wanted to get in on that, where, like I said, for the Browns and Bengals, from pick 70 to 85, try and nab one of those centers, I could definitely see that for them, and that's what I would recommend. Day 3, I'm starting to look at tight end and on the defensive line, and picks 162, 173, or tight end, defensive line will be 162, 173, and then later than that will be just depth everywhere. But ideally, I'd like to come out of here. Let's say it's Jordan Tyson at 14. Pick your run of corners at 45. I don't know if a Chris Johnson can maybe still be there or something, but then 80 would be one of those centers. That's kind of what I'm looking for there for the Ravens.
Yeah, I see. I like it. The Ravens are a little hard to design for and plan for, and yet in some ways, because they're a good franchise, they have a lot of good players. It's not hard, right? It's almost like, hey, whatever we get, we'll make it work. So,
Exactly.
I really do trust them here. That people talk about their drafting and all of that, and it's been good. But also the development has been good. These guys
Hmm.
have for a very long time had a system to put guys into. So it wasn't just the drafting, it's also the system that they've placed them in, and the development there has been huge. Wide receiver, that really is my number one desire here for the Ravens. I would love to pull in a wide receiver. It's an interesting point you make about not wanting to build around Lemon and Flowers because it's two smaller guys. I it's not ideal. Okay, it's definitely not, but I wouldn't hate it. You could do a lot worse than Micaiah Lemon coming in and pairing with Zay Flowers. Now, it's a good point because those smaller guys, if defenses want to lock them down physically by putting one guy over them, just physically beating them up basically, and then sitting a safety somewhere over the top to help with deeps, you can shut them down. That's a real thing. But with the Ravens being so physically gifted at running the football, and with Lamar Jackson being so gifted at playmaking, I still wouldn't hate having Lemon paired with Flowers. So it's something I would take a hard look at, and I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but for the Ravens, I would. I think that would still work pretty good. Lemon's got such a great vertical jump, it makes him play taller than he really is. Having said
Hmm.
that, you can see on the Oregon tape and on the Notre Dame tape where they were able to kind of physically take him out of the game. You know, he just wasn't as effective. So I do get that argument. Jordan Tyson, I do think would be ideal. Um, he's not the biggest guy either, but he is taller, and
Right.
I think he can expand his game farther than what Lemon can. So, having Jordan Tyson there, having him kind of playground it with Lamar Jackson would be a ton of fun,
Hmm.
productive fun. Ravens have struggled so long to draft and develop wide receivers, right? They really have. But still, you got guys that you think might be sitting there. You got a need for it. I don't see why you wouldn't take a guy right there. So I'd be very interested in wide receiver. And then, yes, depending on who's sitting there, interior offensive line, cornerback, yes, I'm all in on that.
Couple things here. You in our mock draft, quick plug for our box score mock draft. It was technically our 2.0, but it was the first big one we did with a lot of hosts from box score. You took
Right.
Kenyon Sadiq here at
Yeah.
14. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting pick because not a true receiver. And it's not that he's not a true tight end because he does block, but I've been saying this since, October with him. He's just a strange body type. He's a strange play style. He's like an H back type that can play out of the backfield, play the slot, play in line because he does block. But yeah, he's like a rocked up 6'3", 245-pound player, and you just don't see a lot of those, right? It's usually like the 6'4", 240 move tight end who's just a big slot receiver, or it's the 6'5", 250 inline tight end. He's almost built like a Chiga Okonkwo, who's like doesn't really have a spot, but he's much better because he can play downfield and he can run routes and he can make good catches and he can block. So for this guy that doesn't really have a spot, it feels like a thing where he would end up on the Ravens and it's like, oh, good player because nobody else knows really what to do with him. I don't know how they would necessarily deploy him or line him up. Obviously, new coaching staff, but that's a player where like I can see just like they just need an infusion of talent at the pass catcher position. Say all three of those top receivers are gone and those two tackles are gone, and they don't want to take a let's say they disagree with me and they don't need a corner. Um, 14 for Sadiq would be interesting just from a like, what is this pass catcher room made up of Zay Flowers and Kenyon Sadiq gonna look like? But it would be pretty cool.
It would. You made an interesting point more than once. Sadiq is not for everybody. He's just not, despite his ridiculous athleticism. There's not one or two, there's multiple instances on tape of him leaping over tacklers. And I mean, they're not low, they're high. He's still jumping clear over them. It's astounding to watch a guy that size do that. And for a guy his size, Oregon ran a ton of tunnel screens for him, alley
Hmm.
screens, whatever you want to call them. I mean, a bunch of them. He's got the speed, the athleticism to do it. It's astounding. But you're right. It's not for everybody. I would not draft him until I'd had a long talk with my offensive coordinator about, are you actually going to use that? Because if you're not, don't waste our pick, So let's go
Yeah.
get somebody that you'll actually use. So he's not for everybody. If the OC was like, yeah, we'll work with that, then I'd be all on board. So it is about just adding a pass catcher, especially if Lemon and Tyson weren't there. But I'd rather have Tyson and Lemon for the Ravens.
Yeah, if you're a team that's like, I need a tight end, I'd wait till day two and get a guy that's in a more typical build, a more typical archetype of a tight end. But if you're like, man, we need a boost to our offense, who do we like for that? Then Sadiq is on that short list, right? And positional alignment and positional value be damned. We just need a spark on offense. He fits that mold.
Yeah,
Um, with these three picks, 14, 45, and 80,
yeah,
to me, I see four big needs. And well, and I guess you're kind of doing two birds here. Cornerback, pass catcher, and then you need an offensive lineman. So what else do you think the Ravens should be doing on the offensive line? Like, let's say they go the route where they don't get somebody at 14. Let's say those guys are gone. Let's say they draft a center at 80.
Yeah.
You're then looking at an interior offensive line of John Simpson at left guard. You're looking at Emory Jones, second year player out of LSU at right
Yeah.
guard.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a Sam Hecht or a Logan Jones at 80. Like, are you rolling with that, or do you feel like they need to do more, whether it's more swings in the draft or go get a vet in free agency?
I'd rather have more. As a matter of fact, maybe you didn't mention him because you're tired of hearing me harp on him, but I was a little surprised you didn't mention Ilwane, the guard from Penn State,
Hmm.
for the Ravens, because I do have a major concern about him, but I still love the potential and the athleticism and the run, all of that. I think for the Ravens, he would be perfect. So
Yeah.
since we lost Linderbaum, if you could tell me we could add Ilwane at 14, get our center at 80, because I do think it's a legit cluster
Hmm.
stack sitting at 80. We
Hmm.
can get a
Yep.
guy at center that we like. I feel way better about our offensive line. And then at that middle pick, what is that? What's our second pick?
45. Hmm.
45. Then we get to either pick a corner, and there's guys I like at corner there,
Hmm.
or we can address the pass
Pass
catcher because
catcher.
there's also
Hmm.
pass catchers there. So, but we couldn't do both, right? So,
Yeah.
pick the
Because that
poison.
and that was what I was gonna get to next. Like, what are you kind of leaving off? Are you only taking one offensive lineman? Are you leaving off the corner? Are you leaving off the pass catcher? They haven't really cared about the cornerback two spot in years,
Yeah,
right? Even when they got Nate Wiggins and finally admitted like Marlon Humphrey's not a number one anymore, that
right.
was kind of a big deal. But now they're just like, yeah, we'll throw a number two out there, and if he's not good, we'll make Marlon Humphrey play outside. And, that's fine for stretches, but it's hurt them in big moments, which
Yep.
I'm like, at some point, they need to invest in this. Um, Iwane is interesting because he was definitely my like favorite pick to mock the Ravens at first. And then the trade with the Raiders happened, and then since they've come back to it, I don't know if I'm just convinced he's not going to be there, and I'm mentally just
Hmm.
taking it off my brain, or if I'm really hung up these days, I think especially this season, this cycle, on guys not switching positions if they don't have to. And they
Right.
bring John Simpson back. And he hasn't really played right guard since like his rookie year with the Raiders. So to me, it's like you went out and you paid Simpson money to fix this problem. So because left guard hasn't been good for them since he went to New York. So it's like he's your left guard, right? You're not going to pay him as a veteran and make him switch positions. And
Right.
then Ioane is a left guard at Penn State. Now he's athletic in that phone booth. So I wouldn't surprise me if he could just walk in and play right guard. But you know how I feel about like you take an offensive lineman in the first round, and then you're like now change positions. Like
Right.
what does that mean? So it I guess it just doesn't feel that clean to me. So I wouldn't err on the side. That's why I was even like if one of those right tackles falls, I'd rather get them, have them at least play the same side, but go into guard and play. And I've told you my theory on Fana, right? The whole like web chart, the flow chart of
Right.
offensive linemen. Like arms are too short to play tackle, so he's got to move inside. Are his feet good? No, he's going to play guard. Are his feet good? Yes, he's going to play center. So like people think Fano could be a center, and he's athletic enough. So like, heck, is he? Do you draft Fano or move up for Fano if you can get him? Because he's falling because of his arms. Although his arm shot back up, 6/8 of an inch or whatever. So he's going to be a tackle again. And they're like, well, we'll see him if he can play guard or center, and we'll draft a guard center capable guy at 80 or 115, and then we'll call it a day. I don't know. It's interesting. Any other thoughts for you on the Ravens?
Yeah, if he was sitting there at 45, Chris Brazzell was a guy I would love to add to the Ravens because Lamar's got the arm to get it out there. They don't necessarily have to have a production level guy. It could be the high risk, high ceiling guy. Brazzell would certainly be a fun guy to add there as well because Flowers is more of the production guy, and Lamar himself is production. I mean, he is production. You add the running game, that's production. You add Flowers, that's production. So if you wanted to, run the risk with Brazzell, it's also an interesting thing there at 45.
I love Brazel. Yeah, it'd be real tough for me if it was like
Yeah.
Ioane at 14 and then Brazel at 45. That's just oh God, that would
Yeah.
suck for me. I'd hate that. I'd hate
Yeah.
that. Stupid Ravens.
So
Stupid Ravens. Okay. Now I'm all frazzled for Brazel, and you got me all messed up thinking about the Ravens doing well. All right, my Pittsburgh Steelers. It's my stupid team. Um, all right, Pittsburgh Steelers. We have picks 21, 53, 76, 85, 99, 121, 135, 161, 216, 224, 230, and 237. One more than the Ravens. Really playing that comp pick game. Um, at pick 21, I'm primarily looking at two places: the left side of the offensive line and wide receiver. Monroe Freeling, Caleb Lomu, Vega Ioane are squarely in my sights, and I'd be willing to trade up for them. Jordan Tyson and Micaiah Lemon are also in that category for me. We have three third round picks, and I'd happily trade the first of those. So that'd be pick 76 to move up. That would get me into like 14 to 15 range. It's funny because that's a very similar trade to what they did for Broderick Jones in 2023. Um, and now here we are again, a few years later, maybe needing to do that again. My board right now goes Freeling, Ioane, Lemon, Tyson, Lomu. Lomu is a little lower on my board than those receivers, but then when I think about the need and the investment in those two position groups for us between, wow, we really don't know who the left tackle is going to be in 2025, and we just traded for and paid Michael Pittman a year after trading for and paying DK Metcalf, I think I'd even put Lomu ahead of those receivers just because of the need. And I really like Lomu, so I'd be happy with that. If I sit at 21 and all five of those guys are gone, my sights turn to Omar Cooper Jr., Casey Concepcion, Peter Woods, and Chris Brazzell. Those receivers would be really good complements to Metcalf and Pittman with their skill sets and infusion of speed. Concepcion Cooper specifically are like slot types. Concepcion is explosive after the catch. Cooper Jr. is a really strong route runner. Um, and then Peter Woods, man, it's just a nod because of the upside. And if I can get him at back to up to 310 pound range instead of the 298 he's at right now, he might be the heir to Cam Hayward in a year. Um, because his ability to penetrate and then just not get pushed off his spot when he was playing a little bit heavier and really get after it and diagnose run plays was really strong. His 2025 tape, as he got cut down a little bit, just not as good. But if I talk to him and can kind of get him back up to that range, I'm pretty confident in what I saw. At 53, assuming I get my offensive lineman done in the first round, I'm looking at receiver. Um, Again, Brazel, I love if he's here. You and I were joking the other day. You didn't know to put Brazel at what was it? What'd you say? 30 or 50 or 30
30
or
or 50.
60?
Yep.
And my quip back was there are numbers in between, but like he really could go anywhere. I feel if he was
Right.
if he was wide receiver 4, if he went ahead of this tier 2 group, it would not
And he
surprise me.
could, yes.
And if he was wide receiver 8 and was after guys like Chris Bell and Concepcion and whoever else you want to put there, it would not surprise me either.
Right.
So I wrote Brazel, and then I'm like, maybe I'll take him at 21 instead of 53. But any of those, day 2 wide receiver guys, I mentioned it, Chris Bell and Jeremy Bernard, and there was one other one, Elijah Surratt, yes, not so much of Malachi Fields, but yeah, any of those day 2 wide receivers, I'll certainly look at. Um, but if I went wide receiver first, I would look at Pregnon and Basantis as left guards, right? Those guys are college left guards. And if I only have the two third round picks now, um, I'm looking with those picks. So at 85 and 99, I'm looking at a safety and a run stuffing defensive tackle. So ideally, like I could get a left guard at 20 or left tackle at 21, a receiver or left guard at 53, and then a safety and a defensive tackle at 85 and 99, let's say. On day 3, we'll resupply the cover with young defensive players, maybe some specialists. Could use a punter, could use a good return man. And on defense, I'm specifically interested in Tacario Davis with that length and the history of defensive backs from Washington. Um, Steelers like those avatar corners, those 6'3" plus long arms. You put me on to Davis like really early last year, and I've been obsessed with that idea ever since. So I'd be checking him out day 3 as well. What do you think about this plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, I like it. I like 98% of it. So trade up for Freeling, Lomo, or Iwane. Yes. Why not? Absolutely. Totally love that. Jordan Tyson, Micaiah Lemon. Trade up. Yeah, why not? Probably not gonna cost you too much. You've got tons of picks and why not? I love it. For me, Omar Cooper, no. We can dive into that if you want to or
Hmm.
not. Concepcion, yes. I do have a little bit of concerns about Concepcion, but not enough
Hmm.
to not draft him here. Okay, so Concepcion, yes. Peter Woods here, if we're gonna stick and pick, Peter Woods might actually be my favorite here out of everything that you mentioned. The upside, the potential upside is there, but I feel like even if you don't get the upside, you're still got a heck of a player that fits in, with this mindset that the Steelers have. So, I like the Peter Woods thing. That was really cool. Um, sliding back down to 53. If you catch a wide receiver there are so many good wide receivers in this year's draft, but not great ones. There's still going to be a small cluster of them sitting there at 53. Even guys like Ted Hurst from Georgia State or Bryce Lance from, I forget
North
where he's
Dakota
from.
State.
Yeah, North Dakota State. Man, those are solid guys right there. I mean,
Hmm.
solid guys. They've got size, they've got athleticism and or speed, they've got production. Those are some solid players sitting back there at 53. So, catching a wide receiver, there's every reason to expect you can get a wide receiver you like to upgrade the room at 53. Every reason to expect it. So yeah, um, grabbing grabbing whatever you want at 21 or trading up to get whatever you really want, and then at 53 picking a wide receiver, it all works. Yeah, I think I liked your Steelers plan better than any of them, and I've liked most of them, but the Steelers plan here absolutely works.
And we should mention like the reason the Steelers are in need of this left side offensive lineman is between Broderick Jones kind of having a slow track of development. Now I put that on the
Yeah,
Steelers for sticking him, drafting him, moving up for him, and then sticking him on the right side for 2 years, not his position. It's
it's a good
annoying.
point.
He plays on the left side for one season and does look better. He's playing the best ball of his career. Like he's more engaged. He just looks more comfortable. Not all the skills were there. He was never a very technically sound player.
Right, right.
Um, and he got regarded as athletic. I don't even think was athletic as a Monroe Freeling, but then he sustains a neck injury at the end of the year, and he ends up needing like neck fusion surgery, I think. So like his like future and outlook is like even questionable at this point. And you've got undrafted free agent Dylan Cook, who stepped in and played well, but he's kind of been up and down since joining the Steelers a couple of years ago. Like really good training
Yeah.
camps, good preseasons, gets into a game, doesn't look great, like doesn't loses the spot as the swing tackle, like the things that happen when you are relying on a small school UDFA. So like I don't want to walk into camp with him as LT1 if I don't have to. Spencer Anderson, currently left guard one, who seventh round pick several years ago, was a really good six offensive lineman for the team, played spot work at left guard this year. Isaac Seumalo leaves in free agency. I don't necessarily want to walk in with him not having real competition to start, so
Yeah.
if I walk into training camp with a first round pick, Spencer Anderson and Dylan Cook, and two of those three come out of camp as starters, I'm happy with that. If I walk in with Anderson, Cook, injured Broderick Jones, and then let's say, a third round pick, I don't feel quite as good about that. So that's why, we're looking on the left side there. We should also have the Ty Simpson conversation here. I kind of wanted to do it with the Browns, but
Yeah.
it applies to the
Yeah.
Steelers as well. Um, if the Steelers pick Ty Simpson at 21, I wouldn't walk out of the draft upset as a Steeler fan, right? I'm a
Yeah.
Steeler fan. Like I wouldn't be that mad. I wouldn't be that excited either necessarily. You get really into the okay, it's we got to start hitting these check boxes of things then, right? Like okay, what's the protection plan? Who is going to be, the left tackle? Okay, are you getting a slot receiver? Okay, what exactly is McCarthy's offense going to look like this year? Does Aaron Rodgers also come back? Is Simpson sitting on the bench for a little bit? Is he competing with Will Harris? I'm immediately going into like fact finding and trying to answer questions. Whereas, yeah, if it's a Lomu or if it's free, like I'm running around the streets, right? And that's just me. Yeah, but um, I think Ty Simpson is a perfectly fine end of day one, early day two pick. I think it's totally fine if someone wants to trade back into the first round for, the Jackson Dart range of where he went last year. If
Yeah.
any team does that, I think that's totally fine. I watch the tape. I watch a lot of Ty Simpson games this year, and I think he can make most of the throws. Some types of throws are better than others. I think I can totally see where his struggles came from at towards the end of the year. I completely disagree with all this. He's actually QB1 stuff that's happening. Um, but I that doesn't mean that I think he's going to be terrible. I don't think this is like a bust waiting to happen. I think he's the perfect like barometer of if he goes and gets into a good situation, he'll be fine, right? And so if that's the Browns, now the Browns shouldn't take him at 6. I wouldn't even necessarily take him at 24 based on what they need, but if they did, that wouldn't be terrible. But if they got him at 39, or I think the Jets have picked 33 or whatever, if someone takes him in that late 20s to early 30s range, that's fine. But like we said with a lot of these guys, like you better have a plan, like whether that's sit right away or just have great weapons around them, great, offensive line around them. I think he's totally fine. How do you feel about Ty Simpson? How would you feel if he went to the Steelers at 21 or the Browns here at, 24 or 39, somewhere in that range?
Steelers and Browns, I wouldn't excite me, but I don't hate it either.
Yeah.
So I'm not high on Simpson. I'm probably lower than most people. I just am. But having said that, if I had an OC that I really trusted, one of the higher end XO guys, like man, they're sharp, they're on it, and they're like, yeah, give me that guy, I'll work with that guy, we'll make it work. And if we
Hmm.
also had a fairly decent supporting cast, you mentioned that the weapons in place,
Hmm.
why not? There's enough there to work with that if I've really got an OC that I trust and love, and he says, yeah, I can work with that, then heck yeah, let's go work with that. I got no problem with that at all. Er- er, Things being new there in Pittsburgh and Cleveland was what really gives. And plus, the supporting cast isn't quite there yet. It's not to
Yep.
say that it can't be, but
Hmm.
it's just not there.
Hmm.
That's the only pause there. So, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. My worries with Simpson are not bad arm, it's limited arm, but also it's are we getting a guy who's just worked really hard at his game and has been to a lot of Manning camps, right? Because a lot of it does look clean, crisp, like he's worked on it. But even having said that, you're exactly right. Good OC, good weapons. He should be fine. I, why not? So yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
And for the Steelers, like it would be I would want someone else to take the beating for a year, probably. Because if you're taking him at 21, you don't have a left tackle, right? You're not finding a left tackle in this draft at 53 or later. You're just not.
Right. Right.
Um, so whether it's a Will Howard throwing him to the dogs or Aaron Rodgers comes back for a year and then you get your left tackle next year, or hey, Dylan Cook ends up being awesome. Like that would be great. I do love Dylan Cook. It's a fantastic story, but it's just not good process to walk in with a, fourth year undrafted player who's never been a full-time star. But you have the
Yeah.
wide receivers that he could throw to, right? You got 2 tight ends, you got 2 receivers, you got a run
Right.
game, you got a couple backs, you have a strong right side of the line. And then Cleveland, you don't have great receivers, but they have a little more draft capital. They've invested a lot in the offensive line. So if they took a tackle at 6, let's even say Simpson at 24, and then they got a receiver at 39, and then at 70, they even get a card. Let's say they got Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. And
Right.
let's say they got Brazel at 39 and Simpson at 24 and Freeling at 6. Then you're like, all right, we might, we got a little something here. Again, I wouldn't start him week 1. You let Shadur take a beating. You let, if you want Watson to play, whatever. If you want Gabriel to get beat for a couple games, fine. But like, both teams like have a case for it. So yeah, I wouldn't be super excited and I wouldn't be super mad. I'd be the most mad I would be is just because I'm not that excited. Like as a fan, I want to walk out of Thursday night and be like, "Holy crap, my team just got this dude I'm pumped for."
Right.
The way I felt about when they took Troy Fautanu, like I was buzzing when the Steelers took Troy Fautanu. And then when they took Broderick Jones even, I was kind of just like, "Yeah, okay, fine. That's whatever." That's how I feel about Ty Simpson.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
I'm with you. If I was gonna play out scenarios, since we've got McCarthy, and since allegedly that was the magical bridge to get Aaron Rodgers back, because if that's the goal, I would
Yeah.
rather walk out with players I was excited about best player available at some of these positions. Let Rodgers and McCarthy do their thing for another season or two, whatever that golden plan was, and then collect a quarterback from one of the next couple of drafts who you never know, but they project to be better than this year's group currently looks. But we said the same thing last summer.
I would need a left tackle to look forward to, and that way I can say I have a left. Like I could just watch Fautanu and Freeling or Lomu all season, and don't watch
Right.
any of the other stuff. It's like when the Steelers took Pickett. I was kind of just like, okay, I know what's gonna happen here. I know why they did it. It's fine, but wake me up when it's 2025, and it's
Yeah.
something new. If 2025 was Aaron Rodgers, so it wasn't that great. All right, moving to the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints, which is funny. We're doing this in reverse order. Who has the highest picks? But I think people might feel best about the Saints, or at least a good chunk of people might feel best about the Saints out of all the NFC South teams, and so they get to pick eight. So here we go. New Orleans Saints picks 8, 42, 73, 132, 136, 150, 172, and 190. There's a lot to like about how the last, year plus have gone for the New Orleans Saints. Took Tyler Shuck in the 40s and he became a decent starter. He looks pretty good. Things seem competent as far as the franchise and the way they're playing under Kellen Moore. The cap is getting healthy for the first time in a decade. I know you're loving that. And our picks and the strengths of this draft are lining up really well. Wide receiver, edge, and corner are our top needs, and I think we can address all three of those with our top three picks. So at 8, we have options like Cardinal Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, David Bailey, Ruben Bain, and Mansour Delane. The order I'd take those players is probably Tate, Bailey, Lemon, Delane, Bain, and Tyson. And I'd be happy with however that played out. At 42, we'll continue to look at all those positions. Brazel, Bell, Bernard, Zion Young, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Yakis, Brandon Cisse, Chris Johnson, D'Angelo Pons are a chunk of the names available in that range. And then once we get to 73, we have to start looking at center, a theme of the night. Eric McCoy is still a good player and our leader in that group, but the injuries and half seasons continue to pile up. So Lou, Slaughter, Heck, Jones are all options there. We'll also keep an eye on whatever position we haven't taken in our top three needs and address it with one of our picks in the 130s if we haven't yet to that point. So, and then the rest of day three, 150 and on, will just be about depth in the trenches and at safety. But I want to come out with a wide receiver, a corner, an edge, and then a center in those first four picks.
Yeah. So I like the needs you've labeled. I like the type of players that you're going after. I will say this for the Saints. It's looking brighter to me than it's looked in a long time. It really is. Now, there's still a world in which Kellen Moore turns out to be a fairly average or mediocre head coach, right? And there's still a world in which Tyler Shuck looks more like what some of us thought he would look like, and that's just not a great quarterback. But based on what we saw last year, it looks a lot brighter than that. Kellen
Hmm.
Moore looks more than capable. And Tyler Shuck, I liked what I saw out of him even better than what I saw out of Jackson Dart from a passing standpoint. And I like what I saw from Shuck way better than what I saw out of Cam Ward last year. I mean, I Tyler Shuck looks like he may have something there. And you mentioned it last spring. And there were other people that were saying, hey, take a harder look at Tyler Shuck because we think there's something there. I wasn't one of those guys, but he showed me enough that I'm a little excited. I'm not a lot excited, but I'm a little excited. So, yeah, absolutely. Now, for me personally, with the Saints, I would still be more open to talent infusion, best player available than I would needs. But, why not direct that into the needs that you mentioned? Yes. I don't know that I would want to take high risk players like a Brazel, for instance, and I also don't
Mm.
think I would want to take physically limited players. Um, it- there's so many good RAS scores these days. It's almost like you have to go back in and research what was driving the RAS,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
But if you've watched the tape and you're like, this guy really seems to burst in terms of athleticism and talent, those are the guys I would want to steer toward if I'm the Saints. But yeah, I'm with you. It's looking really hopeful. It's looking like more rainbows and flowers than what we've seen in a few years.
Which way would you lean for the Saints and their needs? So if you're saying like take the talent approach first, like if you can optimize the talent, but let's say
Yeah.
we were going to specifically look at edge and wide receiver. Because, you know, DB, like, they need DBs, but they have invested in that overall, right? They took a Quincy Riley last year. They took, what was the safety? Jonas Sanker last year. So they've
Yeah.
taken defensive
Yeah.
backs. They need a corner. But you know, if we push those aside, if we looked at 8 and 42 specifically, we'll do the stacking game. But do you like
Yeah.
that collection of edges or wide receivers better at 8 versus edges or wide receivers better at 42? Because like you said, like Brazel is kind of like a high variance player. Bell is coming off the injury. Um, Bernard is a useful player, but not necessarily the most talented. But then you look at the edge rushers at 8, and you're like, okay, Bailey doesn't really stop the run. Ruben Bain has short arms. Which way do you think you lean? What would make you feel best walking out of pick 42 if you took one of those receivers first or one of those edge rushers first?
Let me put off the stacking question for 1 second and just say if I were just picking need that I wanted to upgrade, it would be the wide receiver. I would
Hmm.
love to add a talented wide receiver in
Yeah.
here. So I don't think he's going to be there, but if Carnell Tate were sitting there, I think I'd snatch him up.
Yep. I agree.
Okay. But generally speaking, out of the guys I think might be there, I think I'd rather grab an edge at 8. Whether it's Bain or Bailey, I think I'd rather have them. And then we'll get a second tier wide receiver that should still upgrade our room at the 41-42 spot.
And you can make the argument, you know, Chris Bell, Louisville,
Right.
Shuck, and you know
Yeah.
that might be nice. That might be
Yeah.
nice. You get those two together and you get a Ruben Bain or something at 8. That would be pretty cool.
Yep.
All right. The Saints, man, they've been so complicated for so long. This was one of the easiest ones. It was like, oh, look at that. Team needs, need talent, like good spots in the draft. Like things are going well for the Saints. All right, let's move to the Bucks. It's a little murkier for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Bucks picks 15, 46, 77, 116, 155, 195, 229. Things might finally be transitioning for the Bucks. 2025 was the first time since 2019 that we did not win the division and then therefore make the playoffs. Franchise legends Mike Evans and Levante David both gone from the team. Evans signing with San Francisco. David
Yeah.
officially retiring just today as we recorded, actually, Wednesday the 25th. 2026 is also the last year of Baker Mayfield's current contract. This is not being talked about a lot, but he has void years after 2026. So this is sneaky, like, what's going to happen here? You know, Todd Bowles is always like, is he on the hot seat no matter what happens? But now it's kind of like, is Todd Bowles on the hot seat just because, wow, we might be turning over a new leaf in Tampa Bay in 2027, I guess. Luckily, the team needs for this roster apply to both 2026 and beyond. Defensive line needs a heavy investment, whether it's to help specifically for this year or just because you need to build in the trenches. It could honestly happen with each of the first two picks. Ideally, this would be an Akeem Mesidor and Kalen Bakes at 15 and 46 falling to us. But DJ Parker, Peter Woods, Keldrick Falk, Caden McDonald are all on the board at 15, and then a lot of other names at 46. We'd also be willing to trade back from 15, considering there could be a run of offensive tackles around here. And it feels like a majority of the names I mentioned could be available in the 20s. So we'll certainly take calls here at 56 if we can, or at 15 if we can. At 77, there are several ways this can go. One more defensive name we're interested in is Kyle Lewis, the linebacker out of Pitt. He's a playmaker we can use in the middle of the field. With Levante David being gone, who was just a ball magnet, playmaker, smart guy for so long. We have Alex Anzalone, who we signed, Servassier Dennis, some other thumpers, but Lewis could be like kind of a spark in the middle there. Um, and then and if Lewis is gone at 77, we'll turn our attention to the offense, pass catcher specifically. At 116, I'm looking hard at the quarterbacks. We likely won't be bad enough to be major players in the 2027 class, like talking a 3 or 4 win team that's drafting at the top of that class next year. So just in case, I'm looking to add a young guy to the room here. And everyone knows the names here: Drew Aller, Carson Beck. Nussmeier's probably not all the way down here, but he certainly could be. But I'm looking at quarterbacks at 116. With our late day 3 picks, we'll look at O-line depth, linebacker, if we don't get Lewis there at 77, and then maybe a running back or a pass catcher. But for Tampa Bay, primarily looking on the defensive line, try to jumpstart this defense, get a little juice going. How do you feel about this for the Bucks?
So I like everything you put out there. I mean, every bit of it. The defensive line work, pass catcher, the quarterback. The quarterback's an interesting conversation, actually. But that's not where I'm going. I'm going to bang on something that I've mentioned before for the Buccaneers in passing when we were talking about them in games or in preseason predictions. My favorite spot for Sonny Styles is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
Oh
and my
yeah.
favorite team for Sonny Styles is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Several teams could use him. And this was before Levante David's absence. And I know they signed Alex Anzalone. I understand all of that. But Tampa Bay has had a major hole at linebacker, especially in pass coverage for the past 2 or 3 years now, especially the
Oh yeah.
past 2 years. It had a lot of good defensive things working around it, but boy, that was like a major hole that just kept getting
Mhm.
picked at by even average quarterbacks. And to be able to put Sonny Styles in right there alongside Anzalone and allow him to do the zone dropping that he does, and then the ability to carry some routes, but then the ability to come in and blow up the run game, I would trade up for that. I don't think he's going to be there at 15, but I would
No.
trade up for that. So, that's something I would trade up for. I know they're going to have to trade up pretty far to get him. It's not going to be cheap. I would still do it. I think it's just such a great fit. That aside, I like everything else you're talking about here. If we're sticking and picking, then heck yeah, let's get one of those defensive linemen. Lots of other things there. The quarterback later, yeah, I'm in favor of all of that.
I love Mesidor for them. He's just such a Todd
Yeah,
Bowles guy. Like, it just wreck your stuff up sort of dude on that defensive line would be a ton of fun. Um, because they still have guys like that. Yaya Diaby is a mess you up kind of guy. Vita Vea obviously is a mess you up guy. And then you
yeah,
got Kalijah Cansey with a little bit of the splash. So that would be a fun group. And they've been missing a real true kind of number one guy for a while now. And not that
yeah,
Mesidor necessarily profiles at that, but I think he's a guy that can get 8 sacks a season and be a really tough
yeah.
run defender and just really really fun dude. But like if they swung on a Keldrick Falk, like that would be cool. Could he be on lock there? Um, but they do have a checkered history of taking swings on these sorts of guys. But one of these defensive linemen is definitely necessary. Now for the trade up scenario, I mean, gosh, to for Sonny Styles at this point, like you're talking like first rounder next year, probably. And I just don't think you could do that with the quarterback situation. But let me see here. Did you see this? And this was just late this afternoon, so you might not have seen it. Tape from Arvell Reese at the Ohio State Pro Day came out of him
No,
going
I
around the
haven't seen the
bags.
pro day tape. No.
So there's no bend. Arvell Reese is not bending. He's kind of just like squatting and like he's almost doing
Right.
like the piñata at a party, like baseball bat on the forehead spinning around, like he's kind of doing that thing, which is tough. Some people were really cooking him for how like little bend there was. So if let's say teams get like kind of scared off and are like he is just an off-ball linebacker, and now they're going back through the tape and they're like, do we even like him as much as Sonny Styles as an off-ball linebacker? Like maybe Styles actually goes ahead of him and restarts to fall a little bit. Would you also
Right.
do like a big trade up for Arvell Reese? Say it's at like I mean, we just talked about the Saints at 8, but that was the first number that came to mind. Like, would you do that? Like, think about Arvell Reese just as an off-ball linebacker. Would you trade up for him too, or is this a pure Sonny Styles kind of thing?
It's a Sonny Styles fit because I think Sonny Styles pass coverage, especially in zone, is
Yeah,
is out of
yeah,
this
it's better
world
than
for a
Reese.
linebacker. Yeah,
For sure.
that's really where I'm going with that. Uh, you know, all these guys have concerns, right?
Yeah,
Um, Reese, the idea of Reese being stuck in between positions has been a real thing the entire season. And the idea that he might not ever be a great edge rusher with a lot of sacks, but still that athleticism, size, the ability to blow up the run game,
yeah,
it's still pretty good. I wouldn't trade up for him for Tampa Bay. I wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think I could get behind trading a pick next year. If you're thinking about trying to have any kind of ammunition for a quarterback necessarily, what would you trade? Like obviously, like at minimum, you're talking like 46. So like you're talking about first round and second round probably to move up. But if someone was like, well, 1546 in your first next year, and you can come get the third pick from the car. Remember when the Cardinals a few years ago traded out of, it might have even been three, and then traded back up for Paris Johnson at six. Let's say they were trying to do something like that for a right tackle. They traded back to 15. They pick up a first round pick in 46, and then they trade 15 and 46 to get back to like, again, let's say eight to take one of those right tackles. Would you trade as the Bucks 15, 46, and next year's first to get Sonny Styles at three?
I, I'm not sure I would. Now, it sounds high. Now you're great about, plucking value out of the air, and I usually have to go check the charts.
Yeah, I didn't check the chart
But
on that one. That was off the dome. Let me try to check my
yeah,
math here. Let's see how
yeah.
I did.
While I jabber for a minute, if you want to check and see if that's right or not, 1546 and next year's one is probably something I would not do, even though I love the Sunny Styles match. That probably would be more expensive than I would want to do. Now, if I could do 1546 and next year's two, I might would do that. Or if I could do 1577 and something from next year, I'd be more interested. But yeah, the 1546 and one starts to sound a little rich. So,
All right, let's see. Let's see how I did. 1,050 points for 15, 440 for 46. So if my math is right, that's 1,490 points. 1,490 points gets you to, I mean, that alone technically would get you to eight.
okay.
And then they say subtract 30 or like go back around. So let's say I did another 400 on top of that. That
Okay.
could get you to four. So if that was what you were calling, that would be next year's first. So yeah, to get into that top five, that is probably what it would be.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which,
which is a lot. Which is a lot. If their quarterback situation was more stable, or even if Jason Light is up there, like, no, I know Baker's the guy I want. Then you get into it. But like after the way last year went, the injuries, the way he was playing after the injuries, that
yeah.
would be a lot to bet on Baker again for next year in a way that is like we don't even have a parachute of getting one of those quarterbacks next year. I think everything's kind of lining up for them to be ready to just kind of turn the page on this whole thing. And as much as I love Sonny Styles, yeah, he's so far up, Mox, man. He's gonna get drafted so high. Remember when I was like, I would love the Steelers to draft him at 21. Remember that pipe dream in the fall? Those were the days.
Yeah.
Now I'm
Yeah.
talking about Ty Simpson.
I
Ugh,
know.
I hate football. What are we doing? Why do we do this? Anything else on the Bucks? Is there
No,
one position outside of defensive line or defensive front seven that you're like the Bucks need an infusion here or a certain type of thing here coming out of the draft?
no, oddly enough, they're still kind of in transition. I think Jason Light's a good general manager. I like the
Oh yeah.
work that he does, and yet still, it's like they haven't caught up yet. They caught up to be competitive and playoff competitive, which is great. They
hmm
were dangerous last year at one point,
hmm
but now it kind of feels like yeah, they're having to potentially transition and catch up and hit reset, little mini reset again. So at what point does he get to finally turn the page and catch something really good again? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's Tampa Bay. Carolina, talk about a team that is pretty exciting right now. Carolina Panthers picks 19, 51, 83, 119, 158, 159, 200. With our moves in free agency, we're definitely in a position to take best player available based on whatever direction our franchise wants to go, right? Or if we want to focus more on defense, if we want to focus more on offense, whatever. So with the signing of Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd, we're hoping to break into that top half of the league on the defensive side of the ball. So do we continue to insulate the offense by giving Bryce Young more weapons? Or do we continue to build out the defense with another swing? Avion Terrell, Jamal McCoy, Colton Hood, and Daniel Thieneman are definitely targets for us to add a layer to the secondary that we bypassed in free agency. We hit the defensive line, we hit linebackers. If we want to get that third level of the defense, those are the names. Any of those corners could play outside across from J.C. Horn, with Mike Jackson still being good enough. They wouldn't have to play right away, but if they walk in right away as an upgrade, that could raise the level of the defense. Thieneman will also be good as a running mate for Trayvon Morig, who can move around a lot, while Thieneman can cover a lot of ground as a center fielder. We could look at any position really defensively, even with the moves we made, but I'd probably rather save those swings for day two, like a flyer on another edge rusher, a flyer on another linebacker kind of thing. I'd rather wait. Still thinking first round here. I'm looking at the offense now. So it's probably too late for one of the top three receivers. And I don't need to take from the second tier of guys here. Maybe I consider at 51 or 83, though. I like the group there for the draft capital more than the group here for a first. Like, I like the Bells and Brazzles and all that sort of thing more than a Concepcion or Boston at 19. But I am thinking about Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. Yes, it's a good tight end class, but I have a few good tight ends here in the building, but none of the potential game-breaking skills Sadiq has. Tetairoa McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, and Sadiq would provide an interesting potential of skill sets, a mix of different body types and abilities as the group continues to mature over time. So kind of like what we were talking about with Sadiq earlier, right? Like a team, they don't need a tight end, they don't need a receiver, but just a boost to the offense would be interesting. So if I add Sadiq to the group of four DBs I mentioned, I'd actually probably take Sadiq first out of all of those. I'd probably rather go in that direction. And then at 51 and 83, I think I could take decent swings on defensive backs. And although my tight end and wide receiver rooms haven't changed from last year, an element of my run game, Enrico Dattle is gone. And with the offensive line, Cade Mays is gone, and Ike Ekwonu is dealing with a major knee injury. It does feel like the right move to add something to the offense to keep that from cratering, right? So if Bryce Young was insulated by like decent offensive line, decent run game, interesting pass catchers, I can't replace a left tackle at 19. There's not a running back I'm going to take at 19, but my run game, my pass protection is a little bit different, a little bit shaky now. So let me insulate the offense by adding another weapon. But also with Sadiq, it's not going to necessarily impact Leggett or Coker's abilities to be on the field if I still think something's there. And then even with Cade Mays' departure, I'm going to skip doing the thing we've done with all these other teams, saying I'll look at center on day two. We signed Luke Fortner from New Orleans, who played okay last year, and I can bring back either Austin Corbett or Brady Christensen still for depth between those monster guards we have. So maybe late day three, I'll take a center capable player, but for now, I'm actually going to skip it. Day two, I'll focus on defense. If I get Sadiq, then I'm looking at all three levels of the defense still with 51 and 83. And at 119, I start to look at receiver and then go back to the defense after that. So for the Panthers, the plan I came to is Kenyon Sadiq at 19, defense at 51 and 83, a true wide receiver at 119, and then more depth on defense later on. How do you feel about this move for the Panthers?
I like it. Honestly, I came to some of the same pathways you did. I think I went left instead of right, where you went right, but boy, I was right there on the cusp of these same exact decisions here. I mean, it was flip a coin basically, right? So, yeah, I totally in line with the thinking here all the way through. Let me start. I want to hit 4 or 5 things here real quick. Uh, I want to keep pouring in as many resources into this defense as I can. I know what the Panthers showed at the tail end of last year, getting better defensively. They still, at that point, did not have anywhere near the personnel to keep supporting that kind of performance, especially as they play
Right.
better teams in playoff scenarios. No chance. Need a major that they've started that through free agency. They've absolutely got that ball rolling with defensive talent upgrades. Got to continue that during the draft, I'm convinced. Having said that, need to add a pass catcher here somewhere, somehow, whether it's the first round pick or whether it's that second round pick. They need to add a pass catcher here to this offense because Bryce Young showed enough for them to keep him, but he still needs more help to keep him hanging in there, right? That needs that help. And then I'm with you. I would have already signed Corbett or Christensen, maybe both. I
Mm-hmm.
would have already gotten that done. I don't know why they're fooling around on that. I would have already done that, a week ago. But anyway, yes. And then at 83, I would draft an interior offensive lineman, or at 119. They're still a good cluster. It doesn't have to be center. It can
Yeah.
be center guard, even if they don't play this year. Let them sit for a year. But 83, 119, I would love to start pipelining the younger guys in to replace the older, more expensive guys. They're not old, but they are older and expensive on offensive line. Now, let me settle in on that first round pick right there. Last night, shameless plug. Last night, me and Austin and Shane on Pro Football Enterprises, we did a Panthers 4 round mock draft. We literally sat there and discussed right there at that first round pick Kenyon Sadiq or his Oregon teammate, Dylan Thineman. I mean, that was it.
That's amazing.
There were other options, but that's what we settled on, and we picked Thineman. But we were all three happy with Sadiq as well. Okay. And I love your note in here about Dylan Thineman being a perfect running mate for Trevon Merrick. All right. Now, we also, by chance, last night for Box Score Network, did the Dylan Thineman prospect profile, which will be up just any day now. And I ripped Thineman a new one for some things. The closer he gets to the line of scrimmage, the worse and less effective he is. He's almost useless in goal line and short yardage situations. And out of all the prospects we've covered this year, nobody gets physically pushed around, run over, eliminated more than him. Having said that, his work as center fielder is so good. It's so influential. It's so pervasive. He's so smart at it and's got the speed range combo to do it and the shoulder dropping hits to do it. It is such a work of art. That would go perfect with Trevon Merrick, who tends to be more of a nickel box type of a guy. That would just fit hand in glove. So that's what we did. We loved it. Love putting Dylan Thineman in right there. Wouldn't hesitate to do it. But having said that, I also wouldn't hesitate to drop Kenyon Sadiq in here because the tight end room needs an upgrade. I mean, it really needs an upgrade, not just pass catchers. Tight end specifically could use the boost there. So that's where we ended up with Carolina. So again, when it came to two decisions, we went left instead of right. But man, we're right there in line with all of that thinking.
Yeah, I don't love Thieneman as much as a lot of people, everyone hyped him up before the combine. He had a really good combine.
Right.
They're like, hey, after what happened with Nicky Manwari last year as this like versatile safety goes and tests like an absolute freak, like yada yada.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that is unfair to put on anybody. Manwari is the size of a linebacker, 6'3", 220. And Thieneman's 6', 205. Like it's a completely different world. Manwari is still testing in the 98th percentile of these tests, and Thieneman's at 94, 95th percentile, but at much smaller. So it's a completely different thing. You're drafting him to be a center fielder who can come up and hit a little bit,
right?
Not to be he's like not even like a Brian Brandt, like a play star position. He can play slot corner. Oh, he can be a dime linebacker. Nope, drafting him to be a deep center fielder and like.
Right.
Useful for the right team. The Panthers, kudos to them for their moves in free agency because now they can not even take a swing. They can lay down a bunt, and move guys over. They can just get a little grounder up the middle and try to sneak on base here with this pick. Jermon McCoy would be a fine pick because it's like, hey, if he doesn't work out because of the questions and the injury and the play style, we've got good defensive backs. We'll be okay for this year. But we're taking a swing on the upside of, like you said, can we really get this defense to crack the top 10? So it makes sense.
Yeah.
With that being the ultimate decision, what I didn't want to do was what's the saying? Don't let good be the enemy of great, right? Or vice versa, whatever it is. Like, don't shoot so hard to be great that you miss out on being good. Because what I don't want to happen to Carolina is they're like, okay, let's make this defense top 10, and then they look at the offense and like, oh wait, we forgot Ike Ekwonu's out, so we got Rasheed Walker for $4 million bucks. We lost our starting center Cade Mays, who was an ass kicker, and like Rico Dowdle was like a revelation for our run game for a little bit there, and now our offense is back to 28th, and we had a horrible season, and now we don't have a quarterback, and like and Leggett didn't get better, and Coker is just like a nice flowers. And now our offense is just terrible, and our defense is expensive, and we need a new quarterback. So this was like, that seems like a really bad place to be. So we made those investments on defense, let those guys take us up one more level. Maybe we swing and get to another level here. Now, all that said, if like Mansour Delane is here at 19 or something like that, like forget about it. Like we're taking Mansour Delane. He's higher on my board than all those guys. But yeah, Sadiq, just like that infusion is just interesting, and like adding a layer of a different flavor that we can add to this offense to help Bryce Young would be really interesting for me.
Yeah, agreed. And listen, they won't do what I'm about to suggest. Even though I want to pour in the defensive talent, but it wouldn't bother me at all if they pulled in Kenyon Sadiq at tight end in the first round and then went back to wide receiver and got
Hmm.
a big talented guy or a speed guy with
Hmm.
that second round pick, that wouldn't bother me at all. Because what you're saying is true. You're aiming for a top 10 defense when your offense might slide to 28th. You, even in that division, you're not going to go very far, right? So
Yep.
it is worth considering. Let's make sure this offense is productive, even though, yeah, we would love to build up the defense too. So
Yeah. See Cleveland Browns last 3 years if you want to know
yeah,
what top five defense and or top 10 defense and bottom five
yeah.
offense does. All right. Our last team of the night, the Atlanta Falcons. Let me preface this by saying, as Simon, I've taken every dig at the Falcons that I could
Mm.
over the last year for the trade in last year's draft. I'm not
Everyone
going every single time I had a chance, even chances that didn't exist, I made them.
made them.
That said, moving forward, starting tonight, there's a lot of real life stuff that is horrific going on with James Pierce Jr. And making light of that trade or that player or anything surrounding that is just not something I'm interested in. So moving forward, their draft starts at 48. Not going to say anything else about it. Not going to refer back to it in later pods and just take any more digs. It is what it is. It's done. Closing the book. The Atlanta Falcons have new leadership. I assume they're going to have a new edge rusher over there. Um, and we're just going to move. We're going to F it, we ball, as they say. So the Atlanta Falcons picks 48, 79, 122, 215, and 231, just five picks. This is the start of a new regime, new quote unquote president in Matt Ryan, new quote unquote GM in Ian Cunningham, whatever they're doing to circumvent the Bears getting some draft picks, and a new quarterback, sort of. With five picks in the draft, we need a wide receiver, a defensive front, and a cornerback, and we have some work to do. So last year we were at our best when we had a couple pluggers in the middle of the line, and then just speed on the outside and at linebacker blitzing. So at 48, I'm looking at guys like R. Mason Thomas and Anthony Hill Jr. Just two fast guys. One's an edge rusher, one's an off-ball linebacker that I could just send at the quarterback. We kept defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich. We want to play the defense the exact same way. Caden Ellis left in free agency. So if we got a blitzing linebacker or some more speed off the edge, that's the way we want to play. That's where we think we can be most successful. So that's what I'm looking to do at 48. I need one player coming out of this top 50 that I know can add to my group and get after the QB in a hurry. Then at 79, I'm going to pivot. I need a wide receiver too. The range is sort of tricky to tell who's going to be available here, but just know from names like Elijah Surratt down to like Jacoby Lane and everyone in between, we're interested and we're going to take a swing. Antonio Williams, Ted Hurst, etc. We'll be bringing in a day two wide receiver to go with our top 50 front seven player. On day three, literally as I was typing this up, the Falcons traded down from 114 to 197 and from 122 to 215 to acquire safety Sidney Brown, who gives us nice depth behind Bates and Xavier Watts, but mostly for special teams. But at 122 is where I'll take a swing on an outside corner. Need a true long-standing CB2 here. So 122, I'll take a swing. Then at 215 and 231, I need some O-line depth. Jake Matthews is 35. Caleb McGarry is 32 and coming off of missing all of last season. Ryan Newsel is 30 and a free agent after 2026. Matthew Bergeron is also a free agent after 2026. Meanwhile, longtime swing player Elijah Wilkinson signed a deal with the Cardinals in free agency. So I'm going to take both these picks with my reunion between Kevin Stefanski and O-line coach Bill Callahan and take a flyer on two offensive linemen and see if I can get a future starter out of it. I don't even have names for this. We're just going to take some swings and see what happens. But that's what I'm doing with those five picks, Ben. I'm going to get a speedy front seven player to blitz the quarterback, 79 a wide receiver two, 122 an outside corner, and then two picks in the 200s, a couple offensive linemen. How do you feel about this for Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm with you on most of this. Um, I'm probably not quite feeling as needy to go get a quarterback stressor as what you are, but that's totally fine. That's what they do. That's totally fine. My needs went CB, wide receiver two, linebacker, defensive tackle, offensive line. Um, I will say this: the Falcons, they do have needs in several different places. What I don't want them to do is just try to plug holes with moderate players. With limited draft picks, I really do want them to do what you said, and that is focus on something. Let's get
Hmm.
something rock solid. Whatever position group that is, whether it is more guys getting pressure on the quarterback who are also athletic, they can float around in space, stop run, right? That would be awesome. You know, if they went out and got, two pass catchers, that would be fine. That, you know, or just a really good wide receiver to go with Bijan Robinson and London.
Drake London.
Yeah, that would be fine. Um, I do want them to focus on building something here and not just trying to spread it around when you have limited draft picks. So that really would be the thing for me. So whatever they go with there, that's totally fine. Wide receiver, I would be very interested in. Elijah Surratt is a name that I really love. I think that's he's not a first run guy. He doesn't have that explosiveness, but that's a guy that looks like to me he could be day one starter and play in the league for 8 to 10 years and produce. That's what I see when I look at Elijah Surratt. But there's other guys there. You mentioned Ted Hurst. That would be a good guy there. Just I mean, out of the same, not that far away, either out of the same state. Yeah. So um, I would love that. If they went defensive back, that would be fine as well. They have several things here. Just don't get too scattered. Yeah, focus. At some point, I love your idea late in the draft of taking swings at offensive line because it's not urgent yet, but you do. And listen, we know the odds of you hitting at 215 or 191 on an offensive lineman are small, but you'd love to at least give them a chance. Pipeline in those younger guys to sit behind the current pretty good starters there. I love that as well.
So when you were saying like you don't have a lot of picks, so don't spread yourself too thin, is that like you want to really attack one side of the ball, or is that like try and get somebody that can really solidify a big need? Don't just take a player at because you need someone at a position rather, but it's more about like improving an aspect of the game. So like what type of pass catcher do we need to complement who we have in the room? What type of, like that sort of thing? Or is it more about like, hey, pick one route. You have five picks, use four of them on one side of the ball, and then like take a flyer with the other one.
It's much more what you said the first go around. I would love to target some specific part of the game. So
Hmm.
if we decide that we really need another wide receiver in here, let's not take a random swing in the fourth round. Let's use that top pick and really upgrade that room.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's focus it.
And Surratt's a really interesting name for them. I like Surratt. I was messaging you over the weekend as I was doing my work on these day two receivers, and it's like Brazel is your swing for like a guy that could be a number one, like
Yeah.
size, speed, physicality, hands, all of that.
Hmm.
Bell is a also kind of like a high, not high, kind of a high risk, high reward, but he's like a hyper focused type of player that you're going after. So it's like, I need a guy that's going to take one to the house on drags and slants and like can
Yes.
occasionally do the other things, but like that's what I'm going for. And as long as that athleticism is there, that's a very like narrow scope. And I'm trying to put that in my offense, right? And then Surratt is interesting because I just view him as like, he's going to go on any team, pick any good team you want and be a great number three as just like a dirty work guy.
Yeah.
I see him a lot like what early tenure Jauan Jennings was for the Niners when he was like their number four player. He was like
Okay.
special teamer, rarely came in, but like power slot kind of guy, like made tough catches over the middle. And then like you look up in year four, now he's not signed anywhere right now, which probably speaks to what he's actually viewed at around the league. Like last year, he was a bit of like he got the numbers and got the notoriety because like they needed just somebody to play and he was there. Um, but like I think Surratt could be like honestly like a perfect number three on the 49ers. Like, okay, just work over the middle, make the tough catches, block, play special teams, and like you'll have a role on a good team. That's where I see him fitting in. Um, and like, hey, depending on what Stefanski wants to use with Kyle Pitts, like they've tagged him, like if London and Pitts are essentially your wide receivers, and we don't have any draft capital to get a tight. Didn't they pull a tight end from somewhere? Hang on, wait. I have their depth chart right here. Actually, it was Austin Hooper. They brought in Austin Hooper. So if Hooper's your wide tight end, and you make Pitts your, essentially a big wide receiver. And then Surratt's like your dirty work underneath blocker over the middle dude with Drake London. Like, I could see that pass catcher room. That would be nice. Because Jeremy Bernard is like just a good, solid player complement to like a lot of other good stuff going on. But I think they kind of need a little bit of grit from wide receivers. So I could see that Surratt thing working out. Um, yeah, a lot to do. They do the Tua swing, but they went out and got one of the best coaches on the market. So, um,
Yeah.
and they're not in a bad place. They're just in a place of like we just need to decide where we're headed, right? Do we just kind of maintain what's going on? Do we plan more for the future? Be interested to see what they do. Anything else for you on Atlanta?
Yeah, Atlanta's a little bit in danger of being where, in a year or two, being where Tampa Bay or Cleveland is right now. It's kind of where they're heading. Um, they need to strengthen something, get some real identity. They've got some offensive weapons, and the offensive line has been good, but it will eventually age out on them. So,
Hmm.
um, the defense has a couple of players that have some promise, but it's not enough to really put together a solid one. So they need to pick a lane here and build that. That's my focus theme. But yeah, there's things to work with here, and I do like Stefanski. So we'll see.
And you mentioned the O line and the running game. Like Bill Callahan is a good offensive line coach. Didn't have great success in Tennessee, but good offense. But like their run game was built through their old offensive line coach, who's no longer there, right? Because he even maintained through a couple head coaches. So like is Callahan and Stefanski gonna be all in on a Lindstrom, or are they gonna be ready to move on from a Gary or Bergeron soon? Like they'll have some decisions to make what direction they want to take all that in. But you took a running back in the top 10 of the draft, so that's fine. See, I got a different dig in. Um, Anything else for you on Atlanta or any of these war rooms we just completed?
No, it's been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
All right, everybody. Look at that. We did that in under an hour and 45 minutes. Go us. Thank you all so much for being here. We are going to be back just next week with another round of these. The draft is very, very soon. Ben's looking at his calendar like, oh crap, we're doing another one of these next week. We have, I think, four of these in the next 5 weeks, or four shows in the next 5 weeks, because we'll have our annual NFL draft over under episode as well. But thank you for being here. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. If you're a fan of one of these teams, let us know what you would like to see or what you would like to do, or if we're totally off, or if there's a random bench player that's going to fill one of these roles that we don't know. Please let me know. I would love to know that. All comments are accepted and welcomed. If you're here on audio, A1 Day One, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. If you're here on the Box Score YouTube, thank you so much. Stick around. We have a ton of draft content for you. Go check out Pro Football Enterprises, where you'll see Ben, Shane, Austin do all their offensive player breakdowns as well as mock drafts for team specific ones. And then you'll see full round, eventually maybe a full 2 round mock draft on this channel, as well as updated big boards from me, Ben, Austin, and Peyton. Until next time, thank you all so much. We will talk to you again soon. Have fun and be safe out there.